The freedom of expression, it's sensitive in Malaysia, regardless of whether we're talking about Islam or whether we're talking about politics. Any sort of expression in Malaysia is very sensitive. I suppose that the most recent thing was the National Gallery's art competition, where two pieces were actually taken off the wall. One was political in nature because it had Abu on it, anything but UMNO, but it didn't say anything but UMNO. And the other one was because it had the letter Fa and Qaf on the T-shirt, which, when read together very quickly, sounds very rude. But anyway, so you could see that freedom of expression being curbed in one episode. One reason is political, and the other one is arguably cultural, religious. Anyway, so this is a normal thing, yeah? Freedom of expression, the curbs of freedom of expression. Although we have freedom of expression guaranteed by our Constitution in Article 10, which says specifically, Article 10 is about freedom of speech, assembly, and association. But on speech, it says every citizen has the right to freedom of speech and expression, subject to Clause 2. Right? Okay, so we have to look at Clause 2. And Clause 2 says, on the rights conferred by Paragraph A, which is freedom of expression, such restrictions as it deems necessary or expedient in the interest of the security of the Federation or any part thereof, friendly relations with other countries, public order or morality, and restrictions designed to protect the privileges of Parliament or of any legislative assembly, or to provide any against contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to any offense. So they could, the Constitution allows for limitations on freedom of expression for, well, public order or morality is the one that's most relevant to us today. And I've always said this, whenever I speak about freedom of expression, the common reaction I get, particularly from government types, is the reaction is this: but Azmi, there is no complete freedom. And my answer is, of course there is no complete freedom. I'm not an idiot, I know, all right, okay? But, if you want to have limitations on freedom, there must be limitations on the limitations. Because if there are no limitations on the limitations, then your freedom is meaningless. And in that sense, when we look at, for example, public order, oftentimes, books are banned because it would cause problems for public order, because people might object, people might protest against a particular publication. Now, my argument is, if people want to protest against a publication, it's their right to protest against a publication. But if they go beyond peaceful protest and becomes violent, then who's at fault? It's not the publication. It is those who are taking part in opposing that publication. So you cannot take away a freedom in order because a group of people are going to do something unlawful. That is the same thing as saying, let's get rid of the penal code because, the criminals will do bad things to us if we have the penal code. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, so that's the basic background with regards to our rights as guaranteed under the Constitution and the problems with that. Now, if you look at, of course, I'm not going to talk about Islam in general and the freedom of expression. That's up to Mustafa to enlighten us. I just want to look at our local situation. And what do we have in our local situation? Well, with regards to Islamic matters specifically, the key provisions would be the Sharia Offences Act. Okay, and again, I'm just looking at the KL one, the Federal Territories one. And under Federal Territories, the Federal Territories Law, the Sharia Criminal Offences Act 1997, under Section 13, it says that religious publications contrary to Islamic law, any person who prints, publishes, produces, records, distributes, or in any other manner disseminates any book, pamphlet, document, or any form of recording containing anything which is contrary to Islamic law, or has in his possession any such book, pamphlet, document, or recording, shall be guilty of an offence and shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 3,000 ringgit or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or to both. The court may order that any book, pamphlet, document, or recording referred to in subsection 1 be forfeited and destroyed, notwithstanding that no person may have been convicted of an offence connected therewith. So the issue here is, what do you mean by contrary to Islamic law? Who determines what is contrary to Islamic law? And this, I think, even a layman who, could look at this and see that whoever makes that definition has extreme power to determine what can or cannot be read by the people of this country. So that's very clearly something which we find in our Sharia legislation. And of course, we also have our secular civil legislation, in particular the Printing Presses and Publications Act. And Section 7 states that any undesirable publication can be banned. Now, what is undesirable? Right? And again, that definition lies in the hands of the government. Yeah? And so they basically determine what we can or cannot read. And it's up to them to decide for us, because, they know better lah. So we can see a bit. Farouk has mentioned a few cases. Other cases which I can think of is Irshad Manji's book Allah, Love and Liberty, which was also banned, and this one by a friend of mine, Al-Mustaqim Radhi, Islam dan Pluralisme, which is Islam and Pluralism, which is a collection of essays by a variety of scholars who put forward the argument that Islam embraces pluralism, and that was also banned. Islam and Pluralism, both books were actually published in Malay, all right, which I think makes it a bit more sensitive for them, because that's the very demographic that they don't want to be reading this kind of things. And so we see here that an alternative view being suppressed by the mainstream, by the orthodoxy. I can't remember exactly which law they used to ban these books. I have a feeling it's actually the Printing Presses Publications Act, because that one is broader. You see, the Sharia offense, the Sharia Criminal Offences Act can only be applied to Muslims, whereas the Printing Presses and Publications Act can be applied to everybody. So, so if you use the Printing Presses and Publications Act to ban a publication, then even if it's being sold in MPH or Popular, places like that, then they can take action. Whereas if it's under the Sharia Criminal Offences Act, then it's more limited. However, you can see here that the arsenal to ban books is very strong, and of course this leads to a severe curtailing of any sort of intellectualism in the country. And then but those are cases where you find the freedom of expression being curbed when what is being expressed is specifically an Islamic matter, a matter of Islamic study or Islamic discussion. All right. What is worrying for me is the curb on the freedom of expression on issues where there's no Islamic matter, but they put in Islamic matter by their own strange imagination. For example, all right, the Teresa Cox Chinese New Year video and the Kangkong protest. All right, both these things, as far as I can see, were purely political. However, those who are protesting against it, saying it's insulting against Islam. I searched high and low, in Teresa's video, and this is what I sacrifice, for academic. I had to watch that video. It's very amateurish, but it's very long. It's 11 minutes. I had to go through this 11 minutes of very amateurish comedy, in order to look for things, and I can't see anything. And this Kangkong protest. Okay, you put the Kangkong in Najib's picture, and I mean, where's the Islamic element there? Because Najib is a Muslim, it just doesn't make sense anymore. But of course, the thing is, with this kind of rabble rousing, it's easy to use the word, to use religion, to use faith, to get people angry when there's no reason to. And that is very worrying as well, where religion is used when there are no religious issues, and then that is then used as an excuse to curb the freedom of expression. And then another thing, of course, is that when religion is used directly to curb freedom of expression, which is not specifically about religion. And here's the case I was talking to Mustafa yesterday about Harul Sani's declaration that those who were protesting on the New Year's Eve against price hikes were traitors, and therefore it was legitimate to kill them. You know, this is from the Mufti of Perak. Darah halal, yeah, is the term that he used, and that's extremely disturbing. Yeah, and I'm looking at this purely from the perspective of a Democrat, and I use the word Democrat not like the Thais use the word Democrat, but in its truer sense. But also, these are the obvious things. Yeah? These are the obvious laws which can be used against expression and how it can curb expression. But you know, having read the Sharia Offences Act of the Federal Territories, what I find especially disturbing is how the curbing of freedom of expression also, you know, of course there's a direct correlation with democracy. Expression is an integral part of a democratic practice. But with this particular law, with the Sharia Criminal Offences Act, it goes one step further. And I want to raise two particular sections in it. Yeah, the first section is section 9. Okay, and forgive me for reading this, but Section 9 sounds like this. Contempt or defiance of religious authorities. Any person who acts in contempt of religious authority or defies, disobeys, or disputes the orders or directions of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong as the head of the religion of Islam, the majlis of the mufti expressed by or given by way of fatwa, shall be guilty of an offence and shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 3,000 ringgit or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or to both. And Section 12 reads, opinion contrary to fatwa. Any person who gives, propagates, or disseminates any opinion concerning Islamic teachings, Islamic law, or any issue contrary to any fatwa for the time being in force in the Federal Territory shall be guilty of an offence and shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 3,000 ringgit or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or to both. Now this is crazy on two levels. Section 12, if I'm not mistaken, is talking about fatwas which have been gazetted. So that means they've been made into law. You cannot question a law. I mean, I cannot question the Companies Act. You know, I mean, we all live by laws. And as citizens of a country, we have the right to criticize a particular law if we think it's bad. You know, if we can't, I'm out of a job. You know, a university law lecturer will be, you know, what are we going to do? You know, there's no need for us, you know, because especially now everything's online, you don't even need a library. You just read the law. It's there. It cannot be questioned. You know, it's ridiculous. But what's really frightening is not Section 12, but Section 9. Because Section 9 says that any fatwa cannot be questioned without mentioning whether the fatwa was enforced or gazetted or not. That means just the statement made without it being made into law. So that what this means is that if the Majlis Fatwa, the Fatwa Council actually makes a fatwa, right, in the past, I used to think that a fatwa is only enforceable if it is converted into legislation, if it is then made into legislation. But having read this particular act, it seems to me that just by making the fatwa, it is an offense to question it. That means a group of men, and they're all men, can just make a statement, and that statement carries the force of law without going through the legislative process. That is completely and utterly undemocratic. Because all laws has to go through the legislative process, where it is debated either in the state legislature or debated in parliament and then made into a law. But in this case, can you imagine someone just saying something has the strength of law, and opposing it means you can be fined or even jailed. Now, that is an extremely undemocratic practice. And I think it's extremely wrong. And if you look, I mean, like just today I was reading the news, the Fatwa Council has attacked Komango, the NGO coalition, because Komango supports the freedom of religion, the freedom to choose what faith you want to believe in, and it all, which incidentally is actually in our constitution and under Article 11. And also they support non-discrimination against the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual community and the LGBT community. They did not say that the LGBT community has a right to marry or anything like that. It's just that they shouldn't be discriminated against. And of course, the Majlis, the council has condemned them, saying that they are a threat to Malaysian security. I don't know how, but they are a threat to Malaysian security. And this is the bit I like best. They said that we hope that the Muslim organizations in Komango will return to the true path. Which is their path. All right, okay, so, if a fatwa is made against this group, then theoretically speaking, we cannot defend them. That would be an offense under Section 9 of the Federal Territories Sharia Offences Act, Criminal Offences Act. So, I think basically, I'm painting a very dreary picture because it's clear to me that the laws in this country are extremely oppressive. And although, it's not always used, it's hanging like a sword of Damocles over our heads. My colleagues here, academics, and we know about things hanging over our heads. For example, for academia, we have a particular law called the Statutory Bodies Discipline and Surcharge Act. Under this law, academics cannot say anything for or against government policy without permission first. Can you imagine? You cannot say anything for or even if you want to praise them, you have to ask permission first. Dear Minister, I want to praise you. Please, can I? As far as I know, this law has never been used, but it's there, and it's. And all it takes, and for them, and publication, the definition of publication in that particular act could include my lectures. So all it takes is one student who hates me, and there are plenty, to record me saying something like, oh, this particular policy is very bad, or this particular law is very bad, or whatever it is. And then theoretically, they could use this law. And this is what I'm saying, I mean, all these laws are there. They might not be enforced all the time, but they are there, and they can. And it's just a question of whether they're going to use it or not. And I don't think in a democratic society we should live with that kind of threat hanging over our heads. Thank you very much.